Hello guys, welcome to Blue Tech Empire Python tutorials. And in this video, we are going to be looking at the nested if-else branching construct. Now, what's a nested if-else branching construct? We have a nested if-else branching construct if you have to test for a condition within the code of another condition. For example, if you have an if-else condition within the if code or within the else code or even within the elif code, it's known as a nested if conditional statement. You can have multiple levels of nesting. Now, when you have a nested and a conditional construct within another conditional construct within another conditional construct, those are called levels of nesting. So you can have up to 3 levels, 4 levels, but it's advised programmatically to have a maximum of 3 nesting levels. That's a conditional code within another conditional code within another conditional code. We call that 3 levels of nesting. I think so, 3, but it's best to have 3 levels of nesting. So we are going to be looking at examples. You can, if you want to know more about that, you can check on the internet. But I'm going to be showing you examples which are going to help you grasp the context fully. That's the idea of nested branching construct. So let's go directly to an example. So here is a simple script. Actually, this script collects an integer, an input from the user, it converts it to a float, and now it tests the float for various conditions. As you can see from line 5 right up to line 25, we have the outer if elif else branching construct. As you can see on line 5, we test if the user input is less than 0 or greater than 100. That's out of range. In that case, we let the user know he entered the score. That's line 6. And line 7, we display the score must be between 0 and 100. So here is just a normal conditional statement. You see here we have the elif, which tests the score if it's greater than 80. Yeah, so here we have the outer conditional statement. You can see it's on the margin. That the if, the elif on line 8, the elif on line 14, the elif on line 21, and the else on line 25 makes a single conditional statement. So you can see we have if, elif, and else. Now this is the outer conditional statement. Now within line 8, you see we have on line 10, we have one level of nesting for the if condition. In this case, we first check on line 8 if the score is greater than 80. We display excellent, you pass the exams. And now on line 10, we check if the score is greater than 95. In that case, we let the user know he has a distinction, and then we continue printing from line 12 and line 13. Now, if the user doesn't have a score greater than 95, the code execution will continue from line 12 to line 13, which means line 11 will be skipped and the execution will continue from line 12 to line 13. So we can already say this is a nested if. Why do we say a nested if? Because it's within an elif, the elif statement of line 8. So it's a nested conditional statement because it's within the code of another conditional statement. That's the elif. So the if is within the code of the elif. Now take note of the indentation. You see the body or the code of the elif statement on line 8 have the same indentation. As you can see, this is the line here. They have the same indentation. Now the if statement on line 10 also has a code, but it's just a single line. In this case, we can write it in this form and it's still correct. Like I explained, I think in the previous video, you can write it in this form if it's just a single line of code that should be executed for the condition. You can put it on a straight line, but let's just leave it like this for clarity. So you can see the indentation here. We normally use a tab, that's for space. As you can see, it delineates the body. Now the body of this if condition ends at this point because the statement at this point has the same indentation as the if statement itself. So I just want you to understand that. All right, so now later we go to the if else statement, the next elif statement on line 14. As you can see, it also has a nested condition. In this case, you see we first on line 14 we check if the score is greater than or equal to 60 and less than 80. That is between 60 and 80, but 80 not included. So if the score is between 60 and 79 or 60 to 79, we let the user know he passed the exam. We say, great, you passed the exam. Your score is, and we say score, whatever score the user has. Now we have a conditional statement. In this case, we have an if else. In the previous case, we just had an if, that's line 10. But in this case, we have an if else. As you can see, if score is greater than 70, at this point, we know score is greater than 60 and score is less than 80, meaning the score is between 60 and 80. Now, within this conditional state, within the code of this conditional elif, we check if the score is greater than 70. In that case, we tell the user it has a B plus. If not, which means the score should be less than 70, that's the else part, we tell the user it has a B grade. Now, the next line, we have the next elif on line 21. Now, the next elif on line 21, we check if the score is greater than 50 and less than 60. In this case, we are checking if the score is between 50 and 60. 60 not inclusive. So in that case, we let the user know he passed the exam. Your score is score. I think there is a mistake. Your score is, we should be like this, score. Okay. Yeah, so your score is, okay, let's make sure there's no such mistake again. All right, so you said your score is score, and now it tells the user you earned the C grade. All right, now here is the last part of the outer conditional statement. That's the else part. You know, the else part is the default, has the default code. If this is false, this is false, this is false, this is false, this will be executed. You understand? Without this part, nothing is going to be executed in case all the elifs are all are false. Now, the else part we check. Normally, we know if code execution reaches this point, it means score is less than 50. Because if score is greater than or equals to 50, this part will be executed. Now, in this part, we know score will be less than 50. So in this case, we have 3 or 4 conditional statements. We have the if, elif, elif, else. Now, the first, take note of the indentation. All this makes the body or the code of this else statement. Now, whatever code, this conditional statement also has one line for its body. I told you in this case, you can do like this. You can put all this on a single line. So if you need to minimize space, you can put all this on a single line and it's still going to be correct like this. You don't have any problem. So let's just leave it like that so that you're going to see it's possible to do that. Or let's leave it the other way so you know we take note of the indentation. All right, so in this case, you see, we check if the score is greater than or equals to 40. That's, we mean from 40 to 49 because this code is only executed when the score is below 49. We tell the user it has a D grade. In this, if not, we check if it's greater than 30. That should be 30 for 39 because greater than or equals to 40. This code will be executed. So elif, we do this. Now the last second part, we check if the score is greater than or equals to 20. That will be 20 to 29 because if it was 30, this one is going to be executed. Now, if none of these, that's if this is false, and this is false, this else part will be executed, which tells the user, which advises the user to withdraw. So I think here is a typical example of a nested loop. I think our highest degree of nesting, I think we have 3. I think we have our 2 because we have 1. I think here we just have about 2 degree of nesting. So I don't think this is not so much. Yeah, so we can see the maximum depth here we have is 2, or I think just a single. Here we have 1. Let me see. Oh, just 1. We have just a depth of 1 because we don't, this if condition here is just a depth of 1. So I'm going to show you another example where we have a depth of at least 2, a nesting depth of at least 2, degree 2. So here is a simple example of nested if conditional expressions or nested conditional statements. Let's look at the next example, which looks more complicated than this one. All right. But before going to the next example, let's try to execute this code so you see how it works. So for example, I enter the score 100 and let's say, let me get 90. You see, excellent, you pass the exam. So in this case, you see we are here. Let's see, greater than 80. So we are in this code because the score is greater than or equals to 80. But you see this code will be, this if condition is false, so this code will be skipped. The code on line 11 will be skipped. That's why you see you pass with distinction hasn't been printed out. So execution will continue from line 12 right up to line 13, and finally to the end, which said print thanks and goodbye. So as you can see, we just have excellent, you pass the exam. It gives the user the score and the grade. That's all. Now let's try 95. Let's try 95. Now you see in this case, um, we still have you pass the exam because this condition only tests greater than 95. So let's test for 98. 98. Oh, you see in this case now, this code was executed. As you can see, you passed with distinction here. You can see you passed with distinction. That's because this if code evaluated to true, the condition of this if code evaluated to true, so the line 11 was printed out. Now let's look at the next possible value. Okay, I'm going to say 79. Now 79, as you can see, for 79, this if code condition expression will be false, but because 79 is not greater than 80, but this elif condition is going to be true because 79 is greater than 60 and is less than 80. So this is the code we are in now. Now let's see what happens. They said if it's greater than 70, print you earn the B plus grade. That's why you see here you earn the B plus grade. It was less than 70, for example, we're going to try 69. You're going to see what's happening. Else, which means if it's not greater than 70, the else code. But since the if code was executed, the else code was skipped. So let's try 69 and see. We'll try 69. 69. In this case, we are still here, but you can see the if code was, that's the if condition was false. So the else code was executed. So we have print you earned a B grade. As you can see here, you earned a B grade. Now let's see, let's try 51. So let's try 51. 51. You see in 51, this one will be false because 50 is not greater than or equals to 60, but this will be true because 51 is greater than 50 and is less than 60. So we are in this code here. You see we don't have any nested condition here, so these three lines, which is the body of this elif code or the code for this elif statement, is going to be executed. So we see we have three lines of output here, including the last output, thank you and goodbye, which is at the end, as you can see. So now let's try let's go to 40 now, or let's say 39, or let's run it. So we have 39. Now as you can see, 39, since all this, if this if condition is going to be false, the if condition here is going to be false, the if condition here is going to be false, the if condition here is going to be false, and since everything is false, we're going to fall back to the else code. So we are here now, we check the score greater than 40, greater than or equal to 40. No, so it doesn't have a D grade. Now we check is score greater than or equal to 30, yes, so this code will be executed, and since this elif code was executed, all the rest are going to be skipped. So this will be skipped, this will be skipped, because we already found a matching value. That score is greater than 30, yes, because 39 is greater than 30. So we just have you end and E grade. Now let's try 10 and see if what they're gonna tell us. So here we have 10. Now at this point we see all this is going to be false, 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 and we here now we are in this else code, and this is going to be false, false, false. So this is going to be, because 10 is not greater than 20, 10 is not greater than equals 30, 10 is not greater than equals 40. So we're going to fall in this nested else code, which just advises us to withdraw. So here is the basic. I just wanted to show you how these codes work and a brief explanation for this code. So let's look at another code that's has some more levels of indentation or nesting. Let's look at the depth of nesting, a deeper a code with deeper nesting depth. All right, so here is the code. So as you can see, it's actually don't need all this. I don't think we need all from non-binary base import select dash component import input. So this was generated for us by the compiler. But we don't need that. All right, so here's a piece of code by the interpreter, but we don't need it right now. Or let me see the ID. Now, this actually is some kind of animal kingdom browser. It's better for us to execute this code. So I'm gonna explain it later. So let's try to execute this code and see what's going to happen. All right. Okay. Now let's see. You see, it tells us animal kingdom browser. We can choose to see different animals. In this case, we say vertebrates. It tells us to choose fish, bird, or animal. We can choose one. So it shows us fish. Examples are goldfish and catfish. We can still choose vertebrates and fish, bird, mammals. We can choose birds this time. And it shows us examples are owls. All right, next we still choose vertebrates. In this case, instead of birds, we choose mammals. Now it tells us mammals, we have animals and seals. We choose animals, and it gives us examples are cats and dogs. So in this case, we still choose one, and in this case, we choose three, and in this case, we see the different type of seals. So it shows us examples are elephant seals and harbor. Now let's go to invertebrates. In this case, I'll select two. Um, Annelids, example of annelids are earthworms and leeches. All right, so I'm still going to select two for invertebrates, and let me look at arthropods. Two. If you're not versed with biology, excuse us. But it's just a simple example. So now it said examples are butterfly and spider. So now let's look at this code. You see, we have multiple conditioning here. First, let's take a look at the degree of nesting. If you don't understand the while loop, we're going to explain it later. But here is just an infinite loop. It also has a body like an if statement. Like you can, as we explained for the if statement, a while statement also has a body. We are going to be looking at the while statement or the while loop statement later on, but it just helps the code to run multiple times. Each time you see this animal kingdom browser, it's a new iteration of the while loop. As you can see here is print animal kingdom browser. So each time you see this animal kingdom, it means the loop has restarted. While true just indicates it's an infinite loop, it's going to run forever. Yes, because we don't want the program to end. We just want the program to keep repeating once the user. And take notes, if the user enters a wrong selection, for example, here if you enter 3, it's going to tell you invalid selection. If you enter, for example, 2, and within 2 you put 3, it's going to show you invalid selection. All right, so now let's look how the code works. Now let's look at the level of indentation. You see here we have already 1 from the while. Yes, but after the while loop, we have another level of indentation here on line 10. So here we have one level, here we have 2, and here we can see we have the third level on line 17. So here we can see we have 3 levels of indentation, which is okay for a program. We can even go to the fourth because the external one is the while loop, so we can move to the fourth level of indentation. All right, so let's see let's see what happens. You don't need to worry about the while statement. Let's just start from this print statement. So we display, like you saw, animal kingdom browser, and we show our menu. The user now has to take input. We allow the user to enter a number or an input. We convert it to an integer. Now we check if the selection is 1. We display another menu, in this case fish, birds, and mammals. Now we check if for 1 fish, 2 birds, 3 mammals. So if the user enter 1, we just give an example of fishes. If the user enters 2, we give an example of birds. But in this case now for 3, we have 2 other selections. We display them animals and seals. We collect the user inputs. If the user entered 1, we show examples of animals, and if the user entered 2, we show examples of seals. Now, from this menu, the user enters a wrong input, we see if, elif, else. This else part is the fallback code in case the user doesn't enter 1, 2, nor 3. This elif code is invalid selection, of course, because it's an invalid selection. So let's look at this outer conditional statement. From here, from this if, we have another elif. This elif now, for the main menu, is a selection of two. If the user selects invertebrates, we come here, we display a menu, analysts and attributes. We collect the user input from the keyboard. If it's one, we show an example of analytics. If it's two, we show example of attribute. Else, that's if it's neither one or two, we have a fallback code, which is the else statement, which tells the user an invalid input. And for the outer menu, which has for vertebrates and non-vertebrates, if the user neither enters one or two, we have fallback code, which is the else, which prints invalid selection, try again. So here is a simple code that just demonstrates how you can use, and it's done a lot in programming, especially programming where you have menus, or especially embedded system devices like ATM machines. Conditions are used there a lot, where you can enter a password or say, okay, do you want this? The typical example is like in an ATM machine, where you go in and you put your password, they ask you if you want to withdraw this, how much do you want to withdraw, would you like a printed receipt, or are you done with the transaction, or you want another transaction. All these are if conditional statements, and they are actually implemented internally. Those are embedded system devices, maybe running on Java or some similar programming language. But you see this, that kind of menu you see from an ATM machine when you go to collect money, even for a POS machine, is actually implemented internally with an if else statement. There's no way it has to be done like that. I don't think there's any other conditional statement that can be used for that, or any other programming paradigm that can be used for that. But I think those are conditional statements. So that's another live example of a conditional statement, the ATM machine. All right. In the next video, we are going to be looking at the printf statement and the range functions, so we prepare ourselves for Python loops. All right, so here is the end of this video, and do have a nice time. Thank you.